Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MAGICMICS for 12% off your next order / subscription with Mana Traders. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Power Dragon.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is going to be a good top 10. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about with this set.
It's a big, crazy set. Ruben Bressler.
What's up, y'all? Now we move in herds.
We definitely move in herds. The set has dinosaurs. I'm already on board.
Right.
Happy to hear it. It's going to be great. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from our last top 10 in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Doctor Who cards. Ruben?
You guys also moved in herds. There were a bunch of comments last week, but the comment that we heard the most was from Bob Ross 420X. Great username. Love it. Everything about it. I'm so surprised that no one had Weeping Angel on their list. In my opinion, it's the most thematic and flavorful card in the entire set. 3-mana 2/2 with flash, first strike, and vigilance. When it damages a creature, damage isn't prevented, and the creature is sent back into the library. When a creature is played, it no longer is a creature until end of turn. The flavor on this card is absolutely dripping off of it. In the show, the Weeping Angels turn to stone when viewed by any other living organism. When they touch you, you're sent back in time, and they feed off your energy of the life you would have lived. It feels like Wizards did an amazing job of conveying this on a single piece of cardboard. This also seems very fun when you have it on your side of the table and incredibly annoying to everyone else that you're playing against.
Yeah, the card itself is a black, blue, and a generic mana. It's a rare artifact creature, Alien Angel. It has flash, first strike, vigilance. Whenever an opponent casts a creature spell, it isn't a creature until end of turn. And if Weeping Angel would deal combat damage to a creature, prevent that damage, and that creature's owner shuffles it into their library. And I gotta say, that's really thematic. That's thematic.
Oh yeah, in our defense, I think I had Blink on my list, so we didn't completely ignore the Angels.
Right. And it is one of the greatest episodes, villains that they have, and
one of the greatest villains in the history of television. Yeah, for sure.
It is absolutely fantastic and a terrific pick. Thank you so much, Bob Ross 420X, for being a part of the show. Please contact us on social media, on Twitter. Yes, Twitter. At Magic Mics Cast DMs.
For Bob Ross 420X.
Yep.
It's fine.
X is gonna give it, so on and so forth. Listen, thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's next top 10's free gift certificate. Because we are here to talk about the lost Caverns of Ixalan. You blinked, as you do in Doctor Who shows, and before you know it, there's a brand new Magic set.
That's right.
450 new cards just showing up, and that's not even counting Commander or Jurassic Park, which aren't a part of my list. I don't know if y'all included any of those cards.
No, I just did core set. That was it.
Yep, and it's a little weird. We kind of have to also define that, but that's our day and age. It's where we're at. So let's go ahead and move on here to our top 10 and get this thing rolling. Ruben, what's your number 10? Your number 10?
My number 10 is a card that I talked about on the live show that I'm already excited about. And I think for me, it's a slam dunk, but I don't know that that everyone has wised up to what this card offers. I think everybody understands that when you get a 2-mana 3/1, maybe it's playable. Everyone understands that when you get the 2 damage burn spell that has the set's keyword, that's probably playable. Not everybody's caught on to the fact that if you're a 1-mana permanent that makes 2 permanents, or a 1-mana spell that makes 2 permanents, that's almost always playable in standard. And so Spyglass Siren, I don't care what the cards do, you're getting 2 permanents out of it. The fact that it's actually 2 pretty good permanents helps too. Spyglass Siren is a 1-mana 1/1, 1 blue mana, for a Siren Pirate with flying. When Spyglass Siren enters the battlefield, you make a map token. Map tokens are a new type of token in this set that say, generic tap, sacrifice, target creature you control explores, activate only as a sorcery. So on a very small package for 2 mana only, you get a 1/1 flyer that could be a 2/2 flyer, or a 1/1 flyer that draws you a land, draws you deeper into your deck, and maybe fills up your graveyard. There's a lot to love about both pieces of the Spyglass Siren.
Yeah, we keep making better and better flying men. It's basically what this is. But You're right. The fact that it makes another permanent is actually really good. And this fits into a few different builds where maybe you want something that's just putting stuff into play, something that's trying to create artifacts, right? Something that cares about you sacrificing stuff. So this can fit into a lot of different builds depending on what else the rest of the deck is trying to do.
Yeah, it just, it'll always be in my mind there in the mid 2000s being explained to me by R&D that Flying Men is just too good. That's a level we have not yet reached, and now we have Flying Men Plus Plus that are amazing, and that's what you get with Old Man Magic. So
I feel if I went through, we probably have like 8 versions of Flying Men now.
Oh yeah, and they're all really sweet in their own ways. Power Dragon, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is actually higher on everybody else's list, but shout out to HDMG for calling out Basking Capybara, but did not make my list.
That's going to be a good honorable mention
But
option.
I actually I only bring that up because I saw a video just earlier today that there's a restaurant, I think it's in Japan maybe, that actually has capybara. It's like those cat cafes, but with capybaras hanging out.
Cafe?
Oh,
yeah, like it's crazy.
Terrified me. I thought you said that it was a restaurant that was going to serve capybara.
No. They're too nice.
Terrified.
They're too nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy to have. It's difficult to develop mythics in sets that are low cost. High cost mythic, honestly, I think are a lot easier because once you get a super high mana cost, you can just start doing crazy stuff. But if it's a very small mana count, you got to make those things work. And also, they can't be too busted because they're a low mana cost. And so at that point, you're kind of afraid not just for your standard format or whatever, or their fun in Commander, but could they go do stuff to older formats? I don't know. But I'm very excited to try this one, particularly in Standard. And that's Saheeli, the Sun's Brilliance. She's a red and blue mana for a 2/2 mythic legendary human artificer. And for red and blue, tap : create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So many things depend on dying. So many things depend on being artifacts, tokens you can sacrifice. Like, this just kind of does everything.
Yeah. Very cheap, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, gets down on turn 2. Very good for any amount of cost reduction stuff. If you have anything like Delve or Affinity, to be able to copy 4/4s and 5/5s pretty much immediately, like a Conjurer's Companion or a Gurmag Angler. Mm-hmm. Going to be very easy to make this thing dealing a lot of damage very quickly.
Yeah, and anything that cares about ETB effects also would benefit from this. Mm-hmm. You make a new thing, comes into play, copy stuff. It's kind of the card, like, even if you don't want to deal with it, you kind of have to, because nobody's ever going to play that card just to do some basic things, right? Like, when you see it, something dumb is coming behind it. So you're going to have to deal with it immediately.
Like, even in Limited, like, this thing's a ridiculous bomb. Like, you have to kill it on sight. So when I see something that is like usually just like crazy over the moon in Limited, it's usually good enough in a constructed format because it's very scary to untap with this. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. So let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, what you got?
It's been a minute since we've had the potential for a limited format where you could draft a deck based around a land type. And I loved Gates. I loved the ability to play Gates back in Ravnica. And now we have Caves. There's a couple of cards that remind me of a couple of cards from those old decks. And I'm going to do the classic Ruben thing and pick 2 cards for my number 9 slot. But no one else had them on their lists. So I'm going to pick Bat Colony as well as Calamitous Cave-In as my number 9 collective spot, as sort of the tentpole uncommons for what you want to see if you're playing the Caves deck. Bat Colony, by the way, for you Evan Irwin fans, is 3 dudes seriously. That's 2 generic and a white for a uncommon enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying for each mana from a cave spent to cast it. And whenever a cave enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then Calamitous Cave-In is the Gates Ablaze version of our Caves deck. 3 generic and a red for a sorcery. It deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker, where X is the number of caves you control plus the number of cave cards in your graveyard.
I mean, I love me some thematic, like, clearly these are signpost uncommons, signpost uncommon spells. You know, like you have the cave deck, there was the mazes and stuff. I thought that was cool. I like the idea of making new subtypes, particularly for stuff like lands, because that's uncounterable and those things you can kind of rely on. Of the fact that it's counting stuff in your graveyard and on the battlefield, so you don't have to worry about like sacrificing your caves or discarding them to other things, which is nice. And you know, this is one of those things where they have the ability, like the caves that they have in the set, I think are very cool. But they also have the flexibility of adding some more of those later, maybe some more powerful caves in Modern Horizons 3, for example. Like, and we'll see where they go with that. But it seems fun.
What I like about this is that these are uncommons, right? We didn't put this stuff in the rare slot to where if you open this up, it's like, well, I'm not playing a Caves deck. I'm never going to play this card. Right? And if you're building this deck, great. You're going to be able to get 80% of the parts just at common and uncommon, which is super. I think there's like 1 or 2 rare caves, but they're not essential to playing the deck, which is really nice.
Right.
So it also means there's a higher chance you can actually draft this and have it be a capable deck type. So yeah, I think these are very cool cards for that build.
Yeah, this is the exact kind of thing like, you know, when you played in Phyrexia, it wasn't Infect. I can't remember what was it called again.
Infyrexia?
Yeah, Infyrexia was what was the Infect?
Toxic.
Toxic, thank you.
Yeah.
Like I want to draft
that
a Toxic deck, right? I want to draft that deck to say that I said, you know, that's one of the main themes of the set. I want to draft a cave deck. Like show me what the cave deck can do if I get enough pieces and parts, and let's have some fun with it. I think that's great. Cool. Power Dragon, what's number 9?
My number 9 is a very interesting one in Aklazot's Deepest Betrayal. It's a big bat god for 5 mana. It's a 4/4 flying lifelink, which that in and of itself is at least somewhat playable.
Yeah.
But whenever it attacks, each opponent discards a card, which means commander players are going to love this. And for each player that can't discard a card, you get to draw a card. So you're going to get something positive out of this either way, which is great. But then it has more words. Whenever opponent discards a land, you get a 1/1 flying bat, which is also great. And then when it dies, it turns into another card, which happens to be Temple of the Dead. You can tap it for black mana, or you can pay 3 and tap it and transform it. But you can only activate that if a player has 1 or fewer cards in hand as a sorcery. The thing is, this is going to be easy to flip back because you're probably playing it in some type of discard deck anyway. So there's a good chance your opponent's going to have 0 or 1 cards somewhere along the way. So this is just a nuisance for your opponent. And it has lifelink, which is nice because one of the problems with discard decks is they usually don't have a quality upper end card to try to finish things. And this fits that perfectly.
Yeah, and so what better to go alongside Aklazot's, is that correct? Is the Bloodletter of Aklazot's, which is my number 9. It's got all the
pips.
It's
like we planned that.
Hey,
no, we really didn't.
We didn't, but it's great that it works because for 3 black and a generic mana, this is also a sweet, awesome mythic card. It is a mythic vampire demon. It's a 2/4 flyer, but not really. Because if an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. Damage causes loss of life. So if you hit them for 2 in the air, they're going to lose another 2. So it's kind of a 4/4 for 4. But again, lots of pips for stuff like Devotion, which is awesome. And this is just a scary card. I don't want my opponent to untap with this ability. That's all I'm saying.
I think when I did a review recently with that card, I think my statement was, I'm not a huge fan of the card, but I guarantee I'm going to lose to this damn thing. Like, just the amount of damage that can happen so quickly with just regular creatures or whatever. Like, it's so much damage. Like, everything becomes a must block, right? Like, it's crazy.
Lightning Bolt deal 6, right? Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, this card's Torbran. And Torbran was powerful in Standard. It's literally It's a 2/4 for generic color. And it doubles, like it deals extra damage. This card's insane. Significantly like the best thing you can be playing on turn 4 in an aggro deck. Aklazot's 4/4 flying lifelink for 5, already insane. Then you get like 8 lines of text, one of which is this thing never dies. Just like absolutely bonkers bananas mythics in the Bat God roster.
And like Torbran gave you a damage +2. This is just straight doubling.
This is just straight up doubles.
Yeah. This is way scary. Plus, it has evasion, which Torbran didn't have. So, yeah, it's pretty scary. And mono black aggro could come back into the scene, possibly. All right, well, let's move on here to our number 8. Ruben, what you got?
I mean, I guess we'll stick with mono black in that case. You know, this is a card and a type of card that we've seen kind of before. And every time something like this is printed, it is good. And Greedy Freebooter is exactly what we want to be sacrificing to all of our village rights or our tributes or our exploits. Anytime anyone wants to sacrifice a creature, Greedy Freebooter's right there. Also, this art's great because he's reaching for the thing, but the guy behind him is also reaching for the thing. So it's like a little bit of like an ironic twist there of like, ooh, I got the thing I wanted, said both of the characters. Greedy Freebooter is a 1/1 for a black mana for a human pirate, both relevant creature types. Mm-hmm. And when Greedy Freebooter dies, scry 1 and create a treasure token. Hoo boy, that's good value.
Yeah, I like this card a lot because I think when we start talking about different types of theme decks, one of the first things you think about is like, what are my early plays, right? And this just sets up perfectly for that. And if it dies or you happen to block something or whatever, it's just going to make it easier to cast your next thing a turn ahead. So not anything really to complain about this on a 1/1, which is great.
Oh, I think it's lovely. I mean, the fact that treasure tokens have worked as well as they've done, like Dockside, whatever, like overall, the idea of giving you temporary mana does not break Magic, does not hurt Magic. This guy kind of replaces his mana cost, but kind of not really, but only temporarily, but it's still a token, it's still an artifact, all that stuff still matters. That's super cool. Adding all these relevant types is fantastic. You know, this is a fantastic 1 mana creature, and it's really hard to make those right.
And I don't want to preempt anybody's list, but there is a new very good sacrifice outlet that is akin to a card called Deadly Dispute, which I don't know if anybody's got Fanatical Offering on their list, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. But this is the best thing. A Greedy Freebooter is the best thing to be sacrificed in there as well.
There you go. And it's a great name to just look a Greedy Freebooter. That's a hell of a
that feels good.
Magic name.
That's got a good mouth feel.
Ring.
Yeah.
Greedy Freebooter. Power Dragon, what's number 8?
You know, we talked about this when we just picked out 3 cards a couple weeks ago, and I still have it on my list, but Sovereign Okinic Ohau. Like, it's a 4 mana 3/4 Cat Noble with Ward 2, which is great because we need to be able to protect our stuff. And then this has the weirdest reading text possible I think we've had on a card in a long time. But whenever this card attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the difference. The fun thing about this card, the easy way to describe it is just whatever your power is of your creature, if there's any difference greater than its base power, you get that many +1/+1 counters. So if you have something pumping your creature up by 1, when you attack, you get 1 counter. That's the difference. But then next time when you go to attack, there's now 2 counters. So the difference is now 2. So you're just going to be doubling your +1/+1s every turn when you attack with this thing. The only downside to it is this card has to attack. But like, that's about it. It's a 3/4, which is a nice size body. It fits into several different decks. It can honestly change a combat all by itself too in creature battles. Because if you even have something like the White Adversary or whatever pumping your team for 2, well, now when you attack, everything's an additional +2, right? So it's like, this is a kind of a wild card.
Yeah, for sure. And there are discussions I've seen of this going, maybe not infinite, but going basically infinite with a card called Sage of Hours that requires you to remove +1/+1 counters from it to take extra turns. So if you can get +5 power to your cat, you can take an extra turn. And 1 extra turn's probably enough, especially if you got +5 power on your cat.
Yeah, this is another one of those kind of examples to me is like, how good does it gotta be to not do anything when it enters the battlefield, to still be mythic, like give it some protection with the ward, give it an unbelievably sweet ability once you kind of grok what it means, but it's still sick.
I just thought of something crazy with this card. That green card that like doubles your power during combat.
Yeah.
Ooh,
like
unnatural growth.
Yeah, so then you go to attack, everything's already doubled. Then you attack, and now they get that many extra counters on top of it.
That's a 4 to 5 right there. That's your turn 4 this, turn 5 that.
Yeah,
the game's over. Like that's
real good.
Card's real sick. So I like big numbers on my Magic cards. I like silly Magic cards. I like numbers that go completely nuts. And Have they ever actually printed the number 1000 on a Magic card?
Yeah.
Because they did with the Millennium Calendar. Speaking of more mythics, this card is just silly. This is like, it's hard to make one of the most perfect Johnny cards, but I think this is one of them because you can't not be a Johnny and read this and go, I've got to build this deck. Because for just one generic mana, just good old 1 mana mythic, 1 mana legendary artifact, whenever you untap one or more permanents during your untap step, put that many time counters on the Millennium Calendar. For 2 generic mana, tap : double the number of time counters on it. When there are 1,000 or more time counters on it, sack it, and each opponent loses 1,000 life. Those are just big numbers. I just love big, giant, stupid numbers. Like that's
now
great.
that was my number 10. And mostly because of just general card design, right? Like it's a millennial calendar. It's 1,000 years, 1,000 counters, deal 1,000 damage. And I kind of like it in the sense of it kind of sort of reminded me of Strixhaven Stadium, right? Like you can win with it, but there's some work, right? You got to put some creative effort into it. And this, I think people looking at, I'm going to double my counters, but you're also not considering, you're going to untap all those lands and the card itself every turn. So you're doubling and adding. So it probably is going to take you like 5 to 6 activations depending on the game state, but it is doable.
Yeah, it's not impossible. And a Millennium being 1,000 years it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if this is easier or harder to pull off than Helix Pinnacle, but I've certainly seen Helix Pinnacle go off, so... and it has the word double on it printed on the card itself.
This will go right into every Helix Pinnacle deck, like just right out of the pack.
There you go, that too.
Just flies right into those decks. I like it. All right, let's move on here to number 7. Ruben, what you got?
Well, once again, the pirate-heavy portfolio pays off for the savvy investor. I have yet another little pirate on my list. And this guy has been printed before. With like different numbers and stats and a different face. But I know a Glintnest Crane when I see one, and that's Staunch Crewmate. Staunch Crewmate is a 2/1 for a generic and a blue for a human pirate, uncommon. And when Staunch Crewmate enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact or pirate from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Not only is this a Glintnest Crane, this could be like an Augur of Bolas. This is like a Goblin Ringleader-ish kind of card. It replaces itself. Yeah. It's a 2-mana guy that replaces itself. It can find additional copies of itself in a pinch. We love Augur of Bolas, but sometimes you go land, Augur of Bolas, and it can't find itself. Staunch Crewmate can find another Staunch Crewmate, and we love that about this friend.
Yeah, this is just a good filler card for those builds, right? It helps you keep your hand full. It's not like the best body, but it's getting you another card, so you're not that worried about it. It's just good, solid, and again, it's a human pirate fitting the themes of a couple of different decks. Like, this is a card you're going to look for a lot of different builds, especially in Limited. This is going to be the type of card you want that fills that deck, but could have some constructed play as well, because those other cards did too back in their day. Magic just changed since, but it is still possible.
And in Limited, I want every copy I can find. Just let me draft 3 or 4 of these. Let me chain them together like Cold Snap. Like, let's do this. The card's sweet. The stats are good. I think this is where I'm going to complain officially about the set symbol and how it's impossible to tell the rarity of anything in this set. Like, that doesn't look like an uncommon, but okay.
Yeah, the common and uncommon look a little bit too similar for my taste as well.
Yeah, even when I was looking for rares and mythics, I was just paying attention for the silver marker at the bottom of the card. Like, I was just ignoring the set symbol.
I've got to look at the little letter in the bottom left, or I just don't know what the rarity is at this point. Like, that's a detriment. All right, Power Dragon, what's number 7?
My number 7 is higher on somebody's list, which doesn't surprise me, though. I think when we talk about it, it'll make a lot of sense.
Fair enough. Well, this is my number 7, and it hurt me a little bit to put it as low as it is as a number 7. And Lord knows I'm on a mythic roll, but like this card is bananas. I don't know how else to say it. It's already pre-ordered for like $20. The special version $30+. The Skull Spore Nexus is real. This card is ridiculous. This card is green, and 6 generic mana. It's 8 mana, but you ain't ever going to pay that much. Because as a mythic legendary artifact, it costs X generic mana less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, like, a Titan or something, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness, each equal to the total power of those creatures. 2 generic mana tap, double target creature's power until end of turn. It turns, like, it just by itself is awesome. It makes itself more awesome. It messes up combat just for existing. And if you do kill the thing, I get a token back out of it. Like, what?
Yeah.
This card's crazy.
Yeah, this one barely missed my list. It's really good. The only downside is currently in standard we have a pile of things that like exile creatures, but like outside of that, this card is really good, especially if you're in creature battles of any kind. Like, you're like, yeah, I'll just run all my folks in. Like, who cares? They die, I'm going to get like a 7/7 dinosaur, whatever. Right? Like, let's do it. So yeah, this card's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to compare this card to the Great Henge because it's a legendary artifact, because of its first text, because of its casting cost. But this is actually more along the lines of something like a Cauldron of Souls. This is like a good anti-wrath protection card rather than an anti-wrath like catch you up later card.
Right.
Because now you've got your big business on the board and they wrath, you keep all that power, you double that power. If you've got 3 2/2s on the board, and they wrath, you're still attacking for 12 the next turn with this card on the board. This is exactly the kind of card you want to follow up your big green smashy monsters with to make sure that the no fun police doesn't show up and wrath away everything.
Yeah, and I will say, to add to that, I felt like they did do a decent bit in this set to give creature decks ways to stay active without overcommitting to the board. Which was and this sort of fits that bill. Like, okay, cool. Well, if nothing else, I'm just doubling the power of a thing, and I'm just going to attack with the rest of the boys and see what happens.
Yeah.
If they die, great. You're dealing with another token. Yeah.
Right. Cards, it's just absolutely silly. So, which means I love it. All right, let's move on here to number 6. Ruben, what you got?
Hey, if you want to get the Skullspore Nexus down quicker, or if you want to just have like a consistent draw in your green deck, or you want... Listen, Huatli, Poet of Unity, needs no help. Everybody's gonna know that this card's great. It does a million things. Huatli herself is spectacular, and then we'll get to the Roar of the Fifth People on the back, which is its own kettle of fish. For 2 generic into green, you get a legendary creature, Human Warrior Bard, mythic, that's a 2/3. So already you're getting a 3-mana 2/3 that when she enters the battlefield, you search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. I've played that card, Civic Wayfinder, or District Guide, or whatever, as a 2/2 in Constructed, and been super happy about it. This one's a 2/3, and has another ability. For 3 generic, red, white, so either reds or whites or a combination thereof, 5 total mana. Exile Huatli, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control, activate only as a sorcery, and she turns into Roar of the Fifth People, which is a 4-chapter saga. Very flavorful for a traveling bard, such as Huatli. Chapter 1 is make 2 3/3 green dinosaurs, so you're not giving up power when you flip over into this saga. Chapter 2 is Roar of the Fifth People gains. Whenever you gains, creatures you control have tap, add a red, green, or white to your mana pool. So all those dinosaurs and those little extra guys laying around now add mana. Chapter 3 is search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. Your Galtas, your Gishaths, whatever, what have you, they're kind of expensive sometimes, so being able to have Chapter 3 get them into play is really helpful. Now, how do we kill our opponents? Well, Chapter 4, dinosaurs you control gain double strike and trample until the end of the turn. We've searched for the big thing, we've cast the big thing, we've also got these 2 3/3 dinosaurs. I mean, what's not to love?
Yeah, I like a lot of what this card does. The only 2 things that surprised me when I read through this initially was the land didn't immediately come into play tapped, and the backside didn't flip back to being a Huatli. Right? Like that was literally it. But the abilities on it are all very good. Like, you just play this in a dinosaur deck and just keep ramping up and getting more dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the history, when you look at the Borderland Rangers and the Civic Wayfinders and the District Guides, even like the Far Finders from Ikoria, that was a
Yep.
3-mana generic 1/1 who did that. Like, they don't give you 3 toughness on these. Look at Nissa Vastwood Seer. You still only got a 2/2 there, and that flipped into a Planeswalker. So, like, the idea that they're doing this, like, it's really pushed in many ways, and the other side is fantastic and fuels itself, and like the whole deck kind of builds itself in many ways. Like, this is a cool card to build around in terms of commander deck, I think, immediately. And like, can it get there and constructed? Maybe. Lord knows there's enough powerful dinosaurs to push this thing over the top, and it's sweet. So Power Dragon, what's your 6?
Well, we needed some class around here, so we're talking about the Bedrock Tortoise, or the Tortoise, if you will. But it's a 4-mana 0/6 turtle. As long as it's your turn, creatures you control have hexproof, which is great. And each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Which effectively means this is like a 6/6 for 4, which also protects your board on your turn. Like, this is the type of card that we need more of, right? It's direct. It has basically 2 real lines of text. It tells you what it does. Done. Right? I like this card. Even on curve for the green decks, like now, you could even play this in something like a dinosaur deck if you wanted to, or whatever, just as a filler in the 4 slot. Or if you just want to play mono green aggro or something, you can now be playing 6/6s almost every turn from like turn 3 out, which is crazy. But like, yeah, you're going to be able to do some big stuff with this card.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, man, 4-mana 6/6. That's no joke. There's a lot of dinosaurs in this set that are like randomly 2/4s. There's a lot of big butt idiots in the set. We talked about a 2/4 demon bat earlier, or vampire demon earlier. Huatli is attacks with 3 now if you've got the Bedrock Tortoise. I love turtles. I love hitting people with the backsides. I have an Arcades Walls deck that maybe
this
the
is
Bedrock
perfect for
Tortoise
that.
is a style of card. I mean, the hexproof is no joke. Like, hexproof on your opponent's turn.
Yeah, butt fight is a real thing when you have a 6.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, between we have like Walking Bulwark, and we've got Streetwise Negotiator, you got Bill the Pony that showed up in Lord of the Rings. Like, there's plenty of enablers for this. This is one of the most pushed that we've had. I mean, we're talking, if you got to go all the way back to like Dora and the Siege Tower, which was mind-blowing back in its day, which was great.
Yeah, and that's a 5 toughness.
Exactly, for just 3 mana. So you get 6 here for 4, but it's a lot easier to cast, which is great. And so, we get your assault formations however you can get them. Like, I'll take it. I love it. So for my number 6 here, this is a card that we spoke about on the podcast before. This is a card that is just like, it still blows my mind at how insanely powerful it is, because like, as we were talking about, how much more powerful does a creature need to be when it doesn't do anything when it enters the battlefield? And Bone Horde Dracosaur answers that question, which is mother of God a lot. This thing has to die, because if my opponent untaps with it, I don't think I'm ever going to financially recover from this. Because for 2 red and 3 generic mana, it is a mythic dinosaur dragon. It's a 5/5 flying first strike. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. It didn't need any more freaking words after that. It really didn't, but it kept going. If you exiled a land card this way, you make a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, you make a treasure token. So it's making you mana, or it's making you threats. It's a 5/5 flying first strike Baneslayer anyway in that way. Like, the card is this card blew my mind the second I read it, and it has not stopped. It's not, the shiny's still there. It's very, very strong.
Yeah, this was my number 7, and honestly, like, everybody's like, well, but it just dies to whatever. Like, did your opponent not kill any of your other creatures along the way?
Right.
Like,
Shoulder,
they're not just going to be, they're not going to be sitting on removal just for this card. And if it even survives one time, you get so much extra value. Like, and it doesn't replace your draw card, right?
No.
Like, for the turn, you still get your normal card and access to 2 more. Like, this card is great. I like the amount of value you get the turn after. Like, this is totally acceptable to not do anything when it enters the battlefield, because the next turn is so big, right? It's either extra mana or extra bodies plus 2 cards for the turn.
Cards. You draw 3 cards basically next turn and do stupid stuff with them. Like, what the hell?
Like, that's gigantic. It really is.
This card's nuts.
I really appreciate that I can see the meeting in which this card happened, where they went, "Hear me out, Dragon Dinosaur," and that was the end of the meeting. Like they didn't need to do anything else.
make it
Just
sweet.
figure out what it does.
Print
We want that.
Sold. Yeah,
We
we
love
did
it.
it. Stop digging. We've struck oil.
And let's be honest,
it's-
there's a ton of people that play dragon decks, a ton of people that want dinosaur decks. Like this card's going to have a dumb amount of value. It's going to be sought after by so many players.
It's
Absolutely.
pushing $20 for a reason. This card is
Yeah.
fan freaking tastic, and I just haven't seen a dino like we keep seeing these these 5-mana flying dragons that are cool and unique and different and in our own little weird little way, and this is definitely to me like the top shelf. This is near the top.
Yeah,
of those
I guess
5-mana
like
dragons.
prior to this, it would have been, what was it, the 4/4 with haste that made the treasure when it got targeted?
Yeah,
Goldspan.
Yeah, Goldspan Dragon. Like that's probably the other good one that we've really played in competitive 60 card, really.
Right.
Yeah, I mean you're sacrificing haste, obviously,
Sure, right.
so you don't get Thundermaw and you don't get Goldspan Dragon, which are the ones that you're like, well, we could have had, whatever, or the Thundering guy from Theros.
Mhm.
But in terms of 5-mana things that don't have haste, this is the best dragon that you can have.
This thing is
And-
nuts.
With First Strike, you can just straight up block a Shieldred.
Yeah.
Right,
They can't
so
attack
that-
into this.
that
No one's
does
gonna attack
matter.
into this.
Yeah.
And if they don't attack this, you don't have to attack because everything else it's doing is giving you such crazy advantage.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Can you imagine having 2 of these things out? Lord God, it's not even
Well,
legendary.
I was even thinking about that, right? Because one of the problems you have right now is like your creatures are going to die to like a Wandering Emperor, right? If you
Sure.
attack with something. Here, you're just like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to take my 2 cards and some bodies or whatever every
Go
turn.
draw extra
Right.
cards forever and
Yeah.
run you over with extra advantage of every type.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this card's crazy. All right, sweet. Well, that is a very good card for me to go out on for the next 2 picks because my 5 and my 4 are higher. That's okay. They're awesome. But that means, Ruben, what is your number 5?
I feel like my number 5 had to be on the list somewhere just because of how ubiquitous I feel like it's going to be in many different formats. Probably this is one of those cards that's the older the format, the more you're going to see it. But I'm also planning on seeing it quite a bit in Commander, where Soul Ring is quite popular. But this thing is also going to be doing its deed as a 2-for-1 in Vintage quite regularly, I would imagine, and that is Molten Collapse.
Mm.
Molten Collapse is a black and a red sorcery that says choose one. If you descended this turn, you may instead choose both. And what that means is if you descended, if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere, destroy target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature or non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So, very easy to descend. All you need is a fetch land. All you need is kind of anything to get Molten Collapse to trigger. And what you get is a Dreadbore with upside. Dreadbore was this casting cost, this speed, and destroyed target creature or planeswalker. This is just a strict upgrade of a card that was a 4 of in Standard for many, many months.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people don't understand that this is a good card, right? Like, I was doing a stream a couple days ago, and I just assumed, I'm like, oh yeah, I read through and went, yeah, this card's playable. It's fine.
That's amazing.
And people are like, I don't know, this card's junk. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like, it kills a creature or a planeswalker straight up, if nothing else, for
Yeah.
2 mana.
Yeah.
Sure,
mana.
it's sorcery, but whatever. Like,
Dude.
and then now, like you're saying, in older formats, especially if you're talking about like Legacy or whatever, lots of upside when you potentially get to kill an additional 1-cost thing. Like, this card's
Even-
great.
Oh my God, even in like Pioneer, Modern, like I've been waiting for Dreadbore to come to Arena because it's like the last missing card from those red-black kind of mid-rangey aggro things that show up in Pioneer sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I want to build that Pioneer deck. I'm like, oh, I don't have the
Right.
2 to 3x Dreadbore. It's what you need when you have these metas of a lot of creatures and or planeswalkers. And like, don't discount that other option. That will creep up on you. Be like, oh God, I didn't even think they were going to get rid of that or destroy that equipment or destroy that whatever. You're like, oh well, you got me. Destroy lands.
Also, if
for artifact lands.
If Fury and Grief don't get banned soon in Modern, then this will be a 4 of in those evoke decks.
Sure.
I hope they get banned. Those they just don't seem
They-
very healthy.
They
They're
are very
not.
problematic right now.
Between that and the fact that Wizards has gotten like they are just obsessed with 1 mana reanimation spells. If this thing
Yeah.
dies this turn, they've gotten so crazy good. Like, okay, we need some
Yeah.
lid on that.
Not
madness.
only does this card exile to both Fury and Grief,
Mhm.
but it also, if you cast it after exiling a Fury or a Grief, it has the Descend.
Right.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
it's able to turn itself on. It's able to be its own fuel for those decks. It's just a great card.
It is a fantastic one. Power Dragon, what's number 5?
Man, I feel bad that this even made my list because it feels like a little bit of a cop out, but I also felt like if we didn't talk about it, it wouldn't be complete. Cavern of Souls. I
Sure.
mean,
It's true.
just straight up old school, choose a creature type and then use the mana to make that stuff, and then it can't be countered. Like, this is a card that I think new players don't even know they're going to appreciate yet. Like, everybody who's played the older formats with this card, we know how good it is. But man, just being it, like, because right now, even playing just standard, like, there's a lot of really good counters that are available right now.
Mhm.
And now knowing that, okay, well, turn 2, I go to cast the thing, don't care that you have a make disappear. All right, like, that is huge. That's going to change so many things as far as how people are deck building. Like, and the good news is this card was getting around like $50 or whatever, so we'll probably see it come down to probably around $25-30, which will be nice for a change.
Yeah. And it's good to drive sales of the set.
Mhm.
It's also kind of a healthy card just in general to have exist. The various Technicolor printings that we're getting of this and Mana Crypt are really going to, feed the beast as it pertains to collectors. And you have a tribal set, and it has to do with caves. Cavern of Souls is a perfect fit here. It's not shoehorned. This is exactly the card I would want in this set.
Yeah,
That's true. I guess they didn't upgrade it to label it a cave, but yeah, you're right.
I wouldn't expect them to. It's also mana fixing, right? It's mana
Right.
fixing for anything of that creature type. It is incredibly powerful. If you've not gotten the opportunity to play with a Cavern of Souls, you will enjoy the time with it because it is fun. It fixes all of your problems. It just gives you that kind of that safety, right? That good feeling of knowing, you know what, my stuff's going to resolve. They might kill it, but they
Yeah,
ain't going
and
to
it's-
counter it.
And because of the color fixing, there's really no loss of opportunity cost in your mana, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
if you're playing pirates or dinosaurs or whatever, your deck's probably going to be mostly creatures outside of, let's say maybe 10 cards in your lands. So yeah, you're not going to have any real issues with this card being in your deck.
Right. I mean, sort of way back in the day. I'm not sure how far back in the day we'd have to go, but certainly a little bit further back than Avacyn Restored, it wouldn't have the tap to add 1 generic mana. It would
Right.
only have the other ability, which
yeah,
is it
yeah.
fixes your mana and lets you play without being countered, but that's all you get. You don't get the add mana ability, and that's what pushes it over the top. And that's why no matter how many damn times they've printed this thing, it's $36, almost $40, and it's already still $33. It's just not coming down that far. If you need some for your decks, get them now because this is going to be in print, in standard. It's not going to be any cheaper than more.
And it's going to be standard playable for 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
Like, remember that. So people who need 4 are still going to need 4 for the next 20 or almost 30 months. So yeah.
That said, we're going to move on here to our number 4 card of Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Ruben, what do you got?
I love a rampant growth, and it's been a minute since we've had a rampant growth. And one of the big problems with the card rampant growth is that ones you draw after turn 2 are pretty bad most of the time. Glimpse the Core does not have this issue if you're playing a deck with caves in it. Glimpse the Core is a generic and a green for an uncommon sorcery that says choose one. Search your library for a basic forest card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle, or return target cave card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That's a spicy meatball. So, turn 2, we're ramping, right? Easy ramp, rampant growth, going from 2 to 4, 4 to 6, whatever, what have you. Later in the game, after we've used some of our cool new caves that we've got that we want to sacrifice, like a captivating cave, or maybe our cavernous maw has died, then we get an extra value. We get another bite at the apple on that one. I think that this card is going to easily be a 4 of in a probably a top tier standard deck. Maybe not even caves. Maybe it's just a generic 2 mana, go get a forest. Like, is probably going to be good enough to ramp into some stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this card could be if the deck playing it just wants to ramp and just go get a forest, but it happens to also be playing one of the caves that just fits doing something that deck does. Because then you really want to play this card for some extra late game value. But like you're saying, you get Rampant Growth plus. If you're wanting to play Rampant Growth, it's all upside from there.
I mean, Rampant Growth Plus, I'm already on board.
Yeah.
I'm already ready for this. This card just also kind of vaguely reminds me of the movie Contact. If you've not seen that movie, it is terrific and you
Yeah.
should see it because the flavor text says, wow, it's a good thing we brought a poet. And so in that movie, they said, well, what was it like when you went to, see the alien race? And she said, you should have sent a poet.
Should have sent a poet.
Should have sent a poet. Fantastic. All right, let's move on here to number 4, Power Dragon. What you got?
Man, I have a lot to say about this card, but Pugnacious Hammer Skull. It's a 3 mana, so 2 colors and a green for a 6/6 dinosaur. When it attacks, while you don't control another dinosaur, it gets a stun counter, which keeps it tapped for a turn. That's it. That's the text on this card.
Wow.
It's just a big old body for 3 mana. Pretty much no downside in a lot of decks. Like, the curve you can now have for, say, mono green or Gruul can do some ridiculous stuff. Dinosaurs can be playing 5 or 6 power things turn 3, 4, 5 if they want. Like, this can, I mean, maybe even fight rigging, just mono green can do some dumb things because this is already a 6/6.
Yeah.
Like,
This with fight rigging is great.
like, imagine this fight rigging into like a Galta or something, right?
Right.
Like, this card is so dumb. Like, I don't get it. I love it. It's awesome that it exists. But damn, 6/6, very little minimal downside. Great.
I have a feeling there was like a meeting where someone said, could this be uncommon? And they were like, really? Seriously?
Yeah.
Or something like it could be uncommon, but you have to put 2 stun counters on it or something terrible.
Sure.
And they're like, nah, let's just keep it sweet and make it rare because this card is sweet. This
God,
card's
6 toughness
crazy.
is so many toughness. I would have expected this to be a 6/4. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
something like that.
Great
Yeah.
with Univault.
Something-
That's right. Thank you, RG.
Like what was the shady the guy that shows up at your door that was the 6/4 menace that was black from Capenna? I thought it would be something like that. Usually they have bigger downsides. Than
I mean,
this.
we
Usually
had-
it's like rotting
right.
Regisaur.
Yeah, Rotting Register was a 7/6 and you had to discard something every turn.
Right. This all it requires you to do is to play another one of it.
Of
That's
it,
it. That's all I
exactly.
need.
Again,
Or,
Mutavault,
amazing.
or a
anything in the middle of dinosaur.
Bronodon or whatever, right?
Right,
There's a bunch of quality dinosaurs you're going to be playing.
Yeah, like this 3 mana this into 4 mana some dinosaur that's awesome. Seems really easy. That just means you got a 3 mana 6/6. Enjoy
And
chump
honestly,
blocking this.
Is it that bad if it only swings every other turn as a 6/6
No, it's
in a lot of
not.
fights?
It's fine.
I love it. I think it's great. And so it moves on here into, or works definitely with and somewhat, with my number 3. This card is not a dinosaur, but it is a giant monster. In fact, it's so impressive, it's a god. Oger Koslim or Koslim, if you say that right. Deepest Growth. This is 2 green, 3 generic mana. Currently the most expensive card in the set. It's a mythic 6/5 legendary god with trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. There are no, conditions there. It's just, is it a creature and or a land? You can get both. And when it dies, it sticks around because of course it does, and it turns into Temple of Cultivation, which is a land that taps for a green, and for a green and 2 generic mana tap, transform and activate only if you control 10 or more permanents and only as a sorcery. Having 10 permanents is pretty easy because you're probably going to have 5 to 7 to start with.
Consider it doesn't say non-land permanents.
Right.
That's
It
the
says
thing.
10 or more permanents. So any
Just needs
treasure
the
tokens,
city blessing.
map
Yeah.
tokens, whatever. Yeah.
This card's absurd.
Card is crazy.
This card is Ilhard the Rage Boar, but also gets you lands, also never dies,
Right.
and is the easiest of the gods to flip back up,
Yeah.
I think.
I think so.
Costs 5, so you probably have 5 lands in play. Then this will be your 6th permanent if you've played nothing else the entire game. So if it dies, all you need is to find 4 other permanents that exist to flip it back over and do it all over again. Not to mention the fact that there are just so many insane, particularly green creatures, to be able to sneak with Oger Koslim into play.
Yeah, the one fun thing about these gods too that I don't think we've really talked a lot about is it's basically if it dies, it ramps. Right, because they just come back as a land, so now you can just play more stuff the next turn.
Yeah.
The only real thing I could see holding this back in Constructed and Standard to just be, depending on the deck, are you playing this or the Green Defiler?
Yeah,
being 6
true.
power things at 5 mana, but this card is really damn good. Like, just
Yeah.
getting to put an extra creature and land into play just because you connected is kind of rough on your opponent, for real.
I have a feeling this might have started as a 6/6, and they were like, "This has to die to everything that kills Sheldred. This has to die
Right.
to everything that kills
Maybe.
Sheldred."
Right.
Yes, God help
This
us
has
all.
to be able to die to that first strike dragon.
Yeah, because it made a lot of spells that deal 5 damage now, so it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess that's fair. They gotta have at least some reasonable way to deal with it in a lot of decks.
Some reasonable way. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 does in fact go with that Hammer Skull, and was the topic of some discussion on Twitter and social media of like, has science gone too far? And I think that power creep is something that we're constantly talking about. And at the beginning of the game, or at the beginning of Magic, when you had a colorless and a red creature, you expected something like an Ironclaw Orcs, maybe a 2/2 with no other abilities, maybe. Most of the time they couldn't block if you had a 2/2 for 2. Then we finally got a 3/1 with a downside. Then we finally got a 3/1 with no downside. Then we finally got a 3/1 with upside. Now we have a 3/2 for 2 mana with multiple upsides, and it's uncommon. Belligerent Yearling is a generic and a red for an uncommon 3/2 dinosaur with trample, and when another dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Belligerent Yearling's base power become equal to that creature's power until the end of the turn. So with the Hammer Skull, you're attacking for 6 on turn 3. This card is
With
absurd. With trample.
That is nuts.
This card is... so we had a card called Eldrazi Mimic in the old Eldrazi decks that said that when you played another Eldrazi, the 2/1 would become its power and toughness. Belligerent Yearling, very similar kind of offensive effect, where anything you play on turn 3, dinosaur-wise, this thing's going to be able to step on you with.
And it's more, it's designed in the way that, like, the shock or whatever the equivalent is can kill it. It can be chump blocked. You're going to take a bunch of trample damage, but it can be blocked and killed. So that's clearly the drawback. But man, we are in push territory.
Crazy.
Yeah, the things you can play for 2 in this type of deck are because there's another 2 mana 2/3 that has an upside. There's the thing that makes mana that can also like let you exile dinosaurs and replay them or whatever. Like,
there's a baby Gishath.
Yeah, you're almost going to just be struggling to find where to fit everything, because some of these abilities are nuts, and this definitely goes along with, again, like we're saying, you could be playing 5 and 6 powered stuff every turn after this hits the board, and your opponent has to keep dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean, as chat noted around, the drawback is that it can be killed. That's
Yeah.
the drawback.
Great.
Well,
Awesome.
we found that
The drawback is my 2-drop can die.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Power Dragon. What's number 3?
This one's one I think is going to show up in a lot of unexpected places, but Sanguine Evangelist. It's a 3 mana, so 2 colorless and a white for a 2/1 Vampire Cleric. Again, fits really good into a few builds. It does have Battle Cry, so whenever it attacks, other creatures get a +1 to their attack. And then when it enters the battlefield or dies, you get a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. Again, a card that's nice, clean, and simple, right? It tells you what it does. It's easy to figure out. But for 3 mana, you're getting no less than a 2/1 and a 1/1 with an upside of Battle Cry. And if it never gets to attack, you still get 2 bats at the very least. So it's going to leave you something, so you're not taking a risk in casting it. It may even go into some mono-white aggro decks that don't even care that it's a vampire. It's just giving you the extra attacker or blocker if you need it. Because the bats aren't stuck with the can't block clause. They're actually real creatures. And just having that Battle Cry option is really cool. Like, there's a lot that this card does. If you want to play in any type of Aristocrats deck, it's giving you 3 bodies you can get to sacrifice. Like, it's doing a lot of work for just 3 mana and only 1 white in the cost.
Yeah. Please tell me that we get to have Aristobats in Standard. That's all I want out of my life, is for that pun to exist. If we get a deck that has a lot of sacrifice abilities and bats, and this card will be at the centerpiece of it, then I'd be the happiest camper.
Yeah, it's wild to me that Battle Cry has now become what, deciduous, I think is how they note it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just shows up once in a while. It's fine. It's a very simple mechanic. You understand what it does. It reads very clear, which is cool. And this is the perfect type of card to go into an aggro shell. It stops things that are evasive. You can blink it for value, which is great. Any of your Glorious Anthem type of effects make this thing look very, very scary. And just good on rate, which is some of my favorite stuff. Ruben, what's number 2?
My number 2 is another card that I talked about once upon a time on the live show. Because just like I just said, aristocrat strategies sounds great to me. And this goes great with the last one. So it's really good timing that we're talking about Bartolome del Presidio. Bartolome del Presidio is a white and a black for a legendary creature, Vampire Knight, also uncommon. Yeesh, oof, yikes. For a 2/1 Vampire Knight for 2 mana that has the activated ability of sacrifice another creature or artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Bartolome del Presidio. Vampire and Knight, they're creature types. Sometimes they're relevant creature types, sometimes they aren't. I don't need them to be relevant creature types here. All I want is the line sacrifice a creature or artifact, do anything. Do literally anything. I do not care.
Yeah, it's a sack outlet with no cost. So if you have anything that cares about getting stuff into the graveyard or whatever, it takes care of that. If you have excess treasure, this is a big body your opponents have to deal with. Anything that triggers from stuff dying, obviously you want this to be part of the deck. Like, this is going to find its way into a few things, like you're saying, they don't even care that it's a vampire or a knight. It's just for that sacrifice ability that's going to be helping fuel something.
I mean, sacrifice another creature, artifact, make a ham sandwich. Like, I'm already there. Like, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that it sacrifices creatures or artifacts to get the benefit, which is huge. The fact you can make
Also
map
true.
tokens all over the place, treasure tokens all over the place for
There's
free.
There's a new
That's crazy.
Ichor Wellspring style card in this set. It says when it enters or leaves, you draw a card and lose a life. That's very good with Bartolomeo.
And again, the
there's
fact
a bunch of stuff
that they kept it Bartolome. They did not.
Yeah.
This wasn't the Spanish version of the card. This is the version of the card that is English. I love it. Again, the types are very relevant for those 2 colors, which is awesome. It's a legend, so you can build this around commander, basically. I think it's legendary because it would be completely insane if you had multiples on the board, which is
for sure
another thing.
And it can't sacrifice itself.
It can't sacrifice
which
itself,
mitigates some of it, but this protects you from like a bunch of exile removal if your graveyard is relevant.
Yeah.
Card's great.
I mean, how much of the set depends on things dying? Like, this is right there. Absolutely fantastic. Power Dragon, what's number 2?
My number 2 is another card that just says F your counter spells. In Chimil, the Inner Sun. 6 mana artifact. It is legendary. Spells you control can't be countered. And at the beginning of your end step, discover 5. Like, this card, I mean, like, first off, I don't see a world where this card's ever going to be below probably like $35, $40. Like,
yeah,
this is just free cards every turn. And 5 is a real number. Like, finding something that's 5 or less, those are huge, valuable spells that do a lot. So, like, even if you get stuck where you can't cast something or it's not beneficial, you don't want to commit to the board, just getting free stuff every turn, and it can't be countered. So it's guaranteed to resolve whatever it is. Like, this card is really damn good.
Yeah, it's only that weird, like, it can be countered, but the stuff that you get from Discover can't be, so it's fine. It's just a little odd in that way, but I also understand why it itself is not uncounterable.
Yeah, like, give them a chance.
Let them have a shot at it. This is another one of these, like, oh, you wrath my board? Hilarious. Here's a spell for the rest of the game you're never going to be able to deal with forever. And yeah, I mean, 6 generic mana is a pretty low price to pay.
Yeah, I mean, before you had, what was the other 6 mana big mythic artifact from the old Ixalan?
Immortal Sun?
The Immortal Sun, right? And the Immortal Sun was super cool. Neat. This is arguably even neater. And the fact that it happens at the beginning of your end step, you don't have to wait till your next turn. You don't
you get it.
You don't let the whole table get a chance to deal with your weird 6 mana thing. No, you get the time period between I play it and my end step are against something free that you cannot stop. And
there's
that's
also
lovely.
a non-zero amount of times where you can put something from your graveyard on top of your library or mitigate what you're going to cast. And I mean, there's a number of ways to make this card even better. Not that it needs it.
The other thing good about it, though, is you don't even have to wait to realize your value because it happens during the instep, not during the upkeep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like the idea that, there's no giving the whole table time to mess with your stuff. No, it's a little tiny window. This was my number 5, as I noted, and I just love it. It's great. So let's move on here to I got my number 2 here that I did not speak of, which this card is Bonanners. This card's nuts. Like all these crazy things. I think most to all of my cards were mythics because all of them are just really sweet and dope and crazy and silly and mother of God. This set's nuts because Oger Talk, Deepest Foundation. We talked about it on the show. The card, like anything, it says triples. It's the word triple. 2 white.
The word triples is absurd.
Crazy. 2 white, 4 generic mana for a mythic legendary god. These gods are all nuts. It's a 6/6 vigilance, and if one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, 3 times that many of those tokens are created instead. And when it dies, return to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control, and it turns into the Temple of Civilization that taps for a white mana, and for a white and 2 generic mana tap, you transform it only if you attack with 3 or more creatures this turn, and only as a sorcery, like whatever. This card is this is one of those where, like, because it's 6 mana, they can just go hog wild, and they clearly have.
Yeah, I was thinking about like playing this card with Mondrak earlier in the game on turn 4 or 5, and then like playing this after it, and then you're just getting dumb numbers of tokens.
I don't want to do that because I don't want to do math. If I have a Mondrak and this and a Parallel Lives and a doubling season, I don't want to do that math. I also don't have that many infinite tokens. I love this card. It's great. 6/6 for 6 is enormous. Vigilance is good coming and going.
Great.
3 times that many tokens is just an absurd number.
And I feel like I should point out, I think, because I've been studying like the pronunciation guide set, Oger is actually pronounced O'Hare.
O'Hare.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
O'Hare Talk.
O'Hare Talk. Well, there you go. And this card is just wild, and it's just one of those things where it's like anyone who likes doing silly stuff with tokens is great, but also note how many spells over the last couple of years have made permanent tokens. Like there's a lot of things that have been copying permanents, copying spells, copying permanents, and this just goes bananas. It's already $30+ on a pre-order. It's probably never going below that. If you get one, high five your buddy because you got there. This card is sweet.
And I will say, to transform it back is not that difficult. It's just attack with 3 things. If you're playing a token deck, you can run 3 tokens in, flip it back, right? It's not that difficult.
If you raise the alarm, you made 6 soldier tokens.
I also wanted to
or you could rabble rousing the turn before you play this.
Sure.
There you go.
Then you play this and attack, and then there you go, more math.
That's 18 by itself. That's crazy. I wanted to shout out something I noticed with this set and other recent sets, but something in this set that I really appreciated as like a little nod to older players. Sometimes there will be little nods to old cards or old abilities. For example, Windbrisk Heights on the backside of Temple of Civilization here also required you to attack with 3 creatures. Right. Legion's Landing required you to attack with 3 creatures. So like there's a little bit of a callback situation going on with these white flip cards, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I love that stuff. All those little tiny details, like that's what that's the spice that makes Magic so cool and interesting. All right, let's move on here to number 1. Power Dragon, what is your number 1?
I'm a sucker. I mean, Galta, Stampede Tyrant. I mean,
my number 4.
An 8 mana, 12/12
move.
with
That's
trample.
That's a hell of a Magic card.
I just get to put stuff into play for free. There's so many ways we can trick it into play in every format. So like that is an option. And just your opponent now having to deal with all these other absurd dinosaurs we already talked about today. What are they going to have left to kill Galta? After all that,
exactly.
This card is just big. I mean, it's keyword big that happens to have another ability.
Yeah, for 3 green, 5 generic, a 12/12 trample. When it enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Like that sentence is so powerful. That sentence is so like, so final. Like it's tough because this is also one of the last corners they've kind of painted over in design. They've never had a card that said that. They've had cards that, put stuff from your hand in the graveyard and whatever, and then different conditions or different mana costs. No, this is just any number of creature cards. Just put them on the battlefield, whatever you want to do. And that's remarkable, honestly, that they
and
put
it's an
that on a
ETB. It's not a cast trigger. That's right. The other thing. So even if you reanimate it, you get it on a fight rigging, whatever, right? Like it triggers on every one of those. Mm-hmm. And they built this set where you have a 2 mana thing that cares about dinosaurs that makes mana. There's a 4 mana dinosaur that just makes 2 extra mana because I don't even know why. Like that's a thing. So like casting this is not going to be that difficult.
We've also got Virtue of Strength still, which triples all your basic lands. If you're in the market for that sort of thing. So there's a lot of really cool ways to get Galta to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those where, keyword and one sentence is one of the best cards in the set. Like,
great.
I love the hell out of that. That's terrific. And again, that was my number 4, which is awesome. But our number 1, and I say
right.
our,
we have the same number 1.
Because to me, it's important to note the cards that will change Magic fundamentally. Cards that you will hear about years from now. Cards that you will hear about from older formats. Yes, it's because it's very cheap, but whatever, that's where we're at. And that also means this card is going to be very important and one to know. And Ruben, what is that number 1 card?
Yeah, I mean, if you thought you were copping out with Galta, we're copping out with Get Lost.
We are.
We're really copping out. Generic into white.
That's fair.
Now, please tell me this is a rare. I can't even tell.
It's a rare.
Yeah, it is a rare.
Yeah, it's definitely a rare.
Generic into... Listen, at this point, who knows, man? Generic into white for a rare instant. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker at instant speed for a generic into white. Its controller makes 2 map tokens. I started on map tokens. We're ending on map tokens. They're artifacts with pay a generic, tap, and sacrifice it. Target creature you control explores. Activate only as a sorcery. Sure, they get 2 of these tokens.
Sure.
Who cares?
Whatever.
Maybe they don't have another creature in play. Maybe the next creature they play that they try to target with their map token, you also get lost.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what a perfect name. What an absolutely perfect marriage of ability and name and power level. The specialty art of Get Lost is also spectacular with the Technicolor skeleton.
It's beautiful.
I love this card. Fateful Absence always saw play. Declaration of Stone always saw play. This will also always see play.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I have the feeling this once made only 1 map token, and they were like, guys, you gotta give them 2. This card's nuts.
But why? Honestly, if this card just said destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker, period, we'd all still be playing it for 2 mana, right? Like
OP at that point, wouldn't
it doesn't need.
I mean, the map tokens are for your opponent,
right?
Yeah, but still, I'm just like, this is just nuts. Like, think about the fact
I'd
that
still
we just
play it if it gave my opponent 5 map tokens.
We just recently
Have
got a
pile of
card
maps.
that let us destroy any non-land card and just give the opponent a 1/1. And we're like, yeah, that card's all right, but what if we just have Get Lost and we can just kill everything because? Right?
Yeah, map tokens can't attack or block.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like Raven Form as much as the next guy, but
I'm stunned that this is only 2 mana. Really?
Yeah, same.
Oh, same. And the fact that it kills enchantments too, which almost feels like a throw in, but I think it's very important and lets them really push enchantments
and
moving forward because this is great.
We're in a world where there's going to be a lot of creature lands, and this kills those too.
Yes, good call.
Absolutely.
Does not say non-land.
Yeah, this card is super good. Like, I would not be surprised if this is a $15 or $20 tournament staple in short order.
Yeah, this card is super sweet and would be in all of my white decks, or will be as soon as it is legal. Okay, so that was our top 10 Lost Caverns of Ixalan cards.
I do have one honorable mention that we didn't make the list on anybody's. I thought it might.
All right.
But
steal it from the comments.
O'Hare Axonel, Deepest Might. It's the 4/4 legendary god in red for 4. Yeah. And red sources you control deal non-combat damage. They deal this creature's power instead of their actual damage.
Yeah.
Like, the reason being is I could very easily see this being in one of those silly red decks that, like, when you play an instant or sorcery, deal a damage or whatever with those pair of creatures that are still available. And now that's 4 damage a chunk every time this
Yeah.
happens.
Like
Right?
a
Like,
thermal alchemist or
Yeah.
whatever the other guy is.
yeah,
Well, what
that's
about
gonna
the-
be so silly.
The little enchantment that when you attack with a 1 power or less, it deals the damage to the opponent.
Yep.
That card.
Or food fight. Like,
Anything. Yeah, this card was very close to my list. This card is very, very scary. Your lightning bolt's still 4, your shock's still 4. The silly, deal of damage to your opponent deals 4. Like,
Yep.
It's very scary. And I want to build Thermal Alchemist right now with this command. It seems very strong and very fun. And so that was our top 10 list. You'll see them on the screen right now. For your review, take a look at my list, Power Dragon's list, Ruben's top 10. And when we hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, as always, good to be here. Thank you, chat. Everybody, remember to like, subscribe, review, leave a comment, all that fun stuff.
Leave them reviews, y'all. Thank you, Ruben.
Hey, bye everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan early access event.
That's right. We'll see you guys on Thursday. As we move on here to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, ManaTraders.com, my co-host, Power Dragon, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. Hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. But join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.